Welcome to the Women's Football Show. The season has come to an end, and what a season it has been. We'll be looking back on the campaign and all it has brought today, as well as the weekend's Scottish Cup final, Rangers victorious over Glasgow City. Alison, it's the last show and it's the last women standing here today.
Yes, indeed, and even then there might just be one if by the time we get to the end of this.
We'll dive right into it. Of course, it was the Scottish Cup final yesterday, Rangers coming out on top 3-0 against Glasgow City, and it was a trophy really for the summer and for Joe Potter. They really had to get their hands on.
Yeah, I think it was important, obviously important to both clubs and both teams for different reasons, but I think the optics of winning it are now frame Rangers' season differently. The fact that they've got 2 trophies in the bank, and Joe Potter was very keen to emphasise that that's 4 trophies out of 6 that she's won now. The big question here, of course, is that she's not been able to deliver a title. I think that's what she was brought to the club to do. They missed out by a goal, a solitary goal last season. This season's a bit different. They ended up 6 points off the pace of a Hibs side who probably, in terms of resources, are around half, if not just less than that, of the budget that Rangers have. So I do think there are still question marks there. But I think she will know that ultimately next season she needs to go and deliver the title, and I think by winning the Scottish Cup I think she will get the time to do that.
Yeah, it buys her a bit more time, and she was adamant yesterday to say that she has picked up the 4 trophies, but the one that she really wants has eluded her. What do you think the club need to give her in the summer to get her to that point next season? Because I think it has to be next season, doesn't it?
It definitely has to be next season, but I think when you look, it's a very well-resourced squad. Yeah. I think it's a team full of international players, international quality players. I think she has a good balance between experienced professionals, seasoned professionals who've been over the course, not just in Scotland, but who have come up from down south. I don't think you could argue with the likes of the return from Katie Wilkinson this season in terms of the amount of goals she scored. There are exciting young players emerging. I thought Mia Macaulay was arguably the best player on the pitch yesterday afternoon at 18 years of age. There are very good young talent, so I think there is a good mix. I don't think it's a team that needs a lot of surgery at all, but I do think what it needs is consistency of performance. I think 2 seasons ago, going back to the previous season, they lost out because they just weren't clinical enough in certain moments and in certain games. This season, I think their head-to-heads just weren't good enough when you look at how they performed against the bigger teams, the teams that are going to be their rivals for the title.
Yeah, and they want to hold on, obviously, to all their best players, and you mentioned Mia Macaulay there. Do you think they will hold on to her? She surely has got Premier League written all over her.
I think she'll certainly be on the radar of other clubs. I think when you emerge at 17, 18 and you're playing and exposed to regular first-team football, then there is obviously movement, that there are people watching and there are other opportunities. You have seen it already, you've seen it at Rangers already, just in the very recent past. I think she may personally have designs on going and playing in the biggest league available to her and testing herself. I think she could do with another season at Rangers. I think she could do with just banking, getting to that sort of 100 appearance mark, just getting real consistency of first team selection. She's been in and around Scotland squads, going in and being invited in to train with the squad. I think all that will serve her. Certainly she's a player, the trajectory of her career seems mapped out to go to a different level, to go up another stage again. I think she could do with just another season in Scotland before they start talking about things like that.
Yeah, and the other end of the scale from Mia Macaulay is Jane Ross, who of course they're going to lose in the summer. She's retiring. She was quite coy yesterday when we spoke to her after the game about what she's going to be doing next, or assuming maybe a coaching role with her without Rangers, but she's one that they'll definitely miss on the pitch and probably in the dressing room as well, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think another one who has been over the course so many times, knew what it took to win not just games but win trophies, win silverware. A very, very experienced player in Scotland international. I think the inference from yesterday that we could take is that there's probably a coaching role on the horizon. I think she's very keen to still stay in the game, and I think it's important to have players who then go into coaching and who have had experience of that playing side of it to pass on to a younger and newer generation. But yeah, I don't think there's any real surprise that she's probably calling time now in her career.
Yeah, and yesterday after the Scottish Cup win, Rangers manager Joe Potter was adamant to remind everyone that she's won 4 trophies in her 2 seasons at the club.
I feel the extra pressure being at Rangers. We take away 2 trophies a season and everybody expects us to get 3. We've been really close to that for 2 seasons now. Yes, it doesn't feel great, but we can't forget winning trophies is what it's about, and we took a cup double again. I've won 4 trophies here in the last 2 seasons, which is a big achievement. Yes, it's not the one that we wanted as well on top of it, but we've got to celebrate these moments. We've got to celebrate cup victories, especially when we're turning up in 2 finals like that and beating 2 very good teams, the 2 teams that finished above us.
We look at Glasgow City, we know that the stat is that's now 2 straight seasons without a trophy. Were you surprised by their performance yesterday? Because they really didn't seem to be at it from the first whistle.
Yeah, I was hugely surprised. I don't think that's it. In fact, I think there's an argument to say it's probably the poorest game of their season. I think you've seen them give everyone a game. Like they've turned up, they've beaten Rangers already this season. They've performed well against Celtic, against Hibs, against Hearts. I thought they were entirely insipid at Hampden. I thought there was nothing about them. There was no point within the game where you felt as though they had a grip of it or they had any kind of momentum. I think there was one huge save. Lee Gibson denied Mia McCauley what would have been Rangers' 3rd goal just before the break. I think had that gone in, I think it could have gone on to be quite an embarrassing scoreline for Glasgow City. I thought that was a huge save. And then when the minute Rangers did get the 3rd, just 5 minutes after the break or what have you, there was absolutely no way back. There was nothing about them that suggested a goal back would rally them, that they were capable of putting pressure on. I just felt as though Rangers seemed to be in control of that game from start to finish.
Yeah, it's interesting because you and I were speaking at the game saying this has got the potential to go on and be a 5 or a 6-0. It didn't, obviously, but for Leanne Ross, she's now got to look at Champions League qualifiers, which we know is difficult. It's the non-champions path. We don't want to say it's impossible because it isn't. But she's going to need to have reinforcements in there as well. Of course, she's lost Joe Love, who's leaving the club now at the end of the season. But what do you think she's going to be doing in the summer? What's she need to bring in to get them ready for that, to have any hope?
Yeah, I think she'll assess the squad. I think if you look at the campaign in its entirety, I think it was a fairly positive season for Glasgow City. I think, like Rangers, like Celtic, they will go away and feel as though they could have been in the run for the title. Then they finished second, they missed it by 3 points. It can happen. I think there were positives within the campaign, but ultimately they'll know this is a team who have dominated the landscape of Scottish women's football for so long. They are the most successful women's club in the country, and they have done it time after time. I think it will hurt that there's not a trophy in the cabinet. I think they'll feel sore, not just at the way the season finished, but their contribution to it. I think anyone can lose a final. You can go out and lose a game, and I think you look at Rangers, you look at Glasgow City, on their day, I think the 2 fairly evenly matched teams. It can happen that you don't win it. I think the soreness will come from the fact that they didn't give any kind of account of themselves as a team. They played way below the standards that you would expect from them and standards that they are capable of. So I think it will feel like a long summer as you go and ruminate and reflect on those aspects and the way that the campaign closed. In terms of the Champions League, I think it is tough. And what's also tough for women's teams and where they are the financial implications of what it actually means for them to compete in it. It's difficult. It actually draws resources away when you factor in everything around what it can take to go and try and get into the Champions League and into the group stages of it. We saw last season how difficult it was. Rangers come up against Arsenal. I think you're talking. It's almost like a different game. A team that then actually went on and won the Champions League on Saturday night. Their journey started all the way back in July when they faced Rangers. So it's a very, very tough ask, I think, for Scottish teams to prepare for it. Ultimately, I think And when you assess the season, Leanne Ross's focus will less be on the Champions League aspect of it and more be on where is the silverware coming from and how do we go all the way again and claim the title.
After that defeat to Rangers in the Scottish Cup final, the Glasgow City manager said she was simply lost for words over the performance.
Actually lost for words in terms of what we actually produced today. We never passed the ball, but again, that goes back to playing a team against Rangers that are able to go and press you high up the pitch, and I don't feel like we won any duels at all today either. We were outfought all over the pitch, and that's the biggest disappointment for me because, as I say, I didn't see it coming in terms of the way that we've been playing recently.
If we speak about Hibs then, of course, they are the champions. They have Champions League football as well, a slightly easier pathway, although not easy by any means. What do you think Grant Scott's thoughts are going to be? Do you think his plans have changed that they were previous in terms of signings and the quality of the player they need to bring in to compete again?
I don't think it'll affect that. I don't think the finances involved in participation in it would be significant enough to alter the quality of player that he's looking at. And again, I think it actually can cost clubs in the women's game money to go and compete in the Champions League when you factor in flights, hotels, everything around it. Your pitch has got to be a particular level for UEFA standards for qualification games. There's a lot of considerations to go into it. So no, I think he again will have an idea of what he wants to do over the summer and how difficult it can be. We saw it with Celtic this season. Once you've won a league title, to go and try and successfully defend it, I think that's a different kind of pressure on teams. I wonder about that Hibs team, about whether he can keep it together. I think there's a lot of very exciting young players who are at good ages to maybe now go and move on to other clubs. I thought both Ailey Adams and Kathleen McGovern, excellent seasons. I thought they were really impressive return in terms of goals, contributions. Both have been in and around Scotland squad. Kathleen McGovern's been called up for this camp this week for the games against Austria and Netherlands, the Nations League camp. So they're definitely doing something right. And I just wonder if you might have other clubs now thinking, here's people who know the environment of the league and who have been able to make a very strong contribution to a team going on to win the league.
Yeah, it's inevitable, I suppose, at every team in the summer that there's departures, but I think maybe Grant Scott will hopefully be thinking that they'll want to hang on for another season to try and defend the title and have that chance to get into the Champions League. And I don't know, that might be enough to keep them there, those players that you mentioned?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think the passage again, actually getting into the group stages of the Champions League is tough. I think it's not an easy route, even when you're going through the Champions League. Look, the Champions route is certainly a more viable journey to get there, but it's not to say it's not particularly arduous. I think it can be very difficult. So I think if another club comes in and puts a contract on the table, I think your resolve can be properly tested.
In terms of Celtic, then we know that they had a disappointing season overall, although we caveat that by saying they were in the Champions League at the start of it, and we know what that did to their domestic campaign. I think it's around the start of June when contracts will be up. Do you expect an exodus there, or just a trickle of the players that are going to be out? Elena has herself spoken more than once about this is the last time the group will be together.
I think Celtic's probably the most interesting story now across the summer in terms of changes, because that is a club where you think this is where there could be wholesale changes, and I would probably include the manager in that too. I think Sudoku is still in the dugout for the start of the next season. I think it's a hard decision. I think she's probably got enough credit in the bank, and I don't think there are enough eyes on her role that it will come from the club. But I do wonder about how she goes forward next season and whether or not that's a choice she wants to make. I think her stock remains fairly high in terms of external reputation. You saw her shortlisted for the FIFA Best Award just at December. So she still has a lot of credit elsewhere, and I just wonder if it might be the right time to go and go into a different kind of role somewhere when our credit's still hard. I think if Celtic were not to win the title or not be successful in a domestic sense this season, then your stock starts to fall a bit. So she might feel as though it's the optimum time to move on. Who knows? I don't have any information. That's just purely an observational aspect from me. In terms of that squad, I think it needs to change a bit. I think there have been some very interesting comments made by Elena about the players that she has signed that have come in and been successful, and maybe other players slipping below the radar. I don't know how that might have been received, that kind of chat, or whether or not that's fair comment, because I think you've looked at players that have maybe gone back the way this season at Celtic, and I'm thinking Amy Gallagher, she was outstanding the season that Celtic won the title, in excess of 40 goals, big goals, important goals. I think there are questions to be asked as to why Celtic haven't got the best out of her this season. And I do wonder if a number of the players might feel as though it's time to move on. But certainly Celtic is a club that I think this summer you could be looking at and seeing a very, very different squad who finished the season as a squad who starts it. And I think Elena said that herself. She said to herself, this isn't a group that's going to be together next season.
It's I suppose if you're in that dressing room and you hear the manager say, the players I have brought in are the ones that have excelled, and you know you're not one of those players, then it probably would put doubt in your mind and about what your future is going to be like, or if you want to be at the club. But I was surprised when she said that she would be there, and when she was talking about transfers, and I can only think that it's that reason she backs herself. She thinks that her coaching ability is there, but it's all the other parts that haven't been quite right this season. Who knows if that's going to change next season though? So
yeah, and I think the Champions League factor is a factor, obviously, but I think it's a bit of a misnomer because you did see the effect of it between September, October and Christmas, when you were looking at 3-game weeks with squads that you have to remember too, Celtic's captain and vice captain are not full-time. They're managing other careers. So, of course, it takes a physical, mental toll on a squad when you're having to play that volume of games and you're going up a huge level. And I think in the Champions League, there's a huge chasm between where the Scottish League is and where the Champions League is. It's massive. So I think having to cope with that was always going to have an effect. But by the time Celtic went away, had a winter break, had some time off, went away for a winter training camp in the sun, came back, they had 2 games in hand, they won both of those games in hand, and they were back level then on points at the top end of the table. And where it fell apart for Celtic was the head-to-heads against their title rivals. They had a win over Glasgow City, I think the second game of the season, 1-0 win. It came via penalty. It was a fairly even game on the night, if memory serves me correctly. But when you go back and you look at Celtic's record this season against Rangers, who they've not beaten at all, against Glasgow City, that's where it wasn't good enough. The teams that are challenging Celtic for the league, they were not able to lay a glove on at all, and that's a big headache that they've got for next season, is how to address that. I wonder if there's a mental element there now too. They've not beaten Rangers in 5 games, I think. Glasgow City, I think it would be 4 when you consider there were cup games played as well too. So they have to be able to turn up and produce against teams that are on that they consider to be in the same kind of level with them.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens next season with Celtic, and if Hibs and Hearts continue to go up a level, and of course Rangers, Joe Potter, needing to win the title, I think, for her own Rangers career, and of course Glasgow City. But just, I wouldn't make you speak for too much longer because I know you have the sore throat, but just the season overall, how do you sort of assess it? You've covered many women's seasons. How does this one stand up, do you think?
I think it's very competitive. I think whatever the league lacks, maybe in quality at points, it's a very competitive league, particularly post-split. I think it goes to the wire all the time, which I think is fantastic for the optics of the game. It becomes tremendously exciting to cover, to play in for neutrals, for observers. I think that's one of the great qualities of the league. I think what you saw this season is is a glimpse of the improvements that could be made across the board were there finances for clubs to go full-time. You saw it with Hearts and Hibs. It is no coincidence that Hibs go out and win the title again when they're offering full-time contracts. There's a pathway to full-time football. You saw huge strides from Hearts too. I think Hearts' Eva Ollitt's sides have been particularly impressive. She has improved that team every season. Season upon season, her return has been bettered each year that she's been there. Again, I think you've got a full-time squad. It makes such a difference to everything, to performance levels, fitness levels, mentality aspects. It changes the league entirely, and I think it's very difficult for other clubs when you don't have resources and you don't have the finances to do it. But I think you see the difference. There's a huge difference even in the top 5 now, and that team that finishes 6. Now, last season Thistle done it, this season Motherwell done it. They really struggle to cope then when you're exclusively in an environment that's all full-time teams that you're playing against. I think ultimately the league needs to be moving towards a full-time league. I understand why it's not there yet.
Yeah, it's been an interesting season. There's been highs and lows, but there's never been a dull moment. And just, I think on a personal note, I know that you don't like compliments, but I'm going to give you one. It's been a genuine pleasure to cover these games alongside you. This season, your knowledge, as has been demonstrated all season, is second to none. And your insight into the game, so it's just been.
I don't think that's a unanimous verdict.
Well, it's been good to be at these games and get involved and be on this show as well. And I think most of all, your integrity and everything that you write and the way that you cover the game as it grows has been a real bonus as well. So it's been interesting, and also. I think we need to say thanks as well to Kerry Pollock and Cara Henderson for all they've contributed this season, as well as all the guests that we've had on the show. The Women's Football Show, of course, will be back next season, bigger and better, and maybe with some new faces as well. So stay tuned for that. And thank you to you for watching, and thank you to Alison.